Hi, and welcome back to Early Language Strategies for Parents and Guardians. We are now in part 3. So far, we talked about communication development, different areas of communication, and the kinds of strategies that you can use to target those particular areas. We're now going to have a look at motivation, why it's important, and how it can help us make the most of our interactions and create more opportunities for your child to communicate. So it's really helpful for us to think about what your child's interested in and what motivates them. That's going to give us the best opportunity to support them using the strategies. So have a think about what really motivates your child. It has to be something that they really want. So it's not something that they kind of like or they like some of the time. We want to think about what they are really going to be invested in and what's a really good incentive for them. So thinking about anybody, even adults, if I said as part of this session that you had to run on a treadmill for half an hour, would you do it? And thinking about what incentives would be helpful for that. So if I offered you a bar of chocolate, how would you respond compared with me just saying well done at the end? Or what if I offered you £100 for every minute that you were running? So sometimes things like verbal praise are not the most motivating or interesting, and toys that children aren't interested in all of the time are maybe not the best to use these strategies with. You can start to do that over time, but we want to start with the things that they really want so that they can communicate that to you in some way. So have a think about your child's favourite things. It could be their favourite toys or activities. Do they have favourite foods? What types of games and physical play does your child enjoy? And who does your child like to spend time with? You'll know some of these off the top of your head, but it's also going to be helpful for you to have more of a think about this and start to watch your child to see what they're communicating. So interpreting those signals. So the first thing we need to do is watch, wait, and listen. We want you to get in a position where you can easily make eye contact with your child and follow what they're doing. Watch what they're doing and see what they're interested in. So what activities, toys, people do they gravitate towards, and what are they communicating, whether this is intentional or not. The more interested a child is in something, the more likely they are to communicate to you about it. Waiting, as we've already said, is one of the most powerful things you can do during interactions. It gives your child that chance to process what you said, thinking about their understanding, but also to have a go at communicating themselves. So for them to develop their expressive language skills. We want you to listen out for any sounds or attempts at words that your child might make during this time. It's really key that you look and listen for these. Sometimes those signals can be a little bit more subtle, especially thinking back to those more shy or passive children that we might need to work a little bit harder to notice what they are communicating. So watch, wait, and listen. Get down on their level. As we said before, try to wait up to 10 seconds. Practice waiting 10 seconds. We did that earlier in the training, and it does feel really unnatural. You might find that your child will lose attention during that time, so you might need to reduce that to 5 seconds or 8 seconds, but see how far you can stretch it out to give them the opportunity. Some children might need even longer to process, so you can try extending that up to 15 or 20 seconds and seeing if they give you a response during that extended time. Okay, so we're going to have a look at different ways we can create opportunities for children to communicate, thinking about different interaction strategies. So hopefully you've had to think about what your child's interested in, and you're going to look out for that going forwards and how they communicate. So now we need to consider how we're going to get the most out of those interactions. Taking turns is really important. So ultimately we're working towards things like conversations, which is a set of taking turns. If one person does all the talking, the other's going to get bored and switch off, and you wouldn't really consider it a conversation if you've not been able to take part in that. So those very early turn taking things like taking turns to make sounds or rolling a ball back and forth, are going to build up towards those conversational skills. At this early developmental level, we want to consider any communication attempt as a turn in the conversation. So whether that's a sound or a grunt, or you're getting a little wriggle or a laugh, we need to interpret that as your child communicating something. So they've taken a turn and then you respond, and you can keep that interaction going. You may have activities that your child is already doing and that you can join them with, and you can use those earlier strategies during those. We also want you to think about, are there times during the day where you can create even more opportunities for your child to communicate? So we want to create as many different opportunities as possible during the day. And quite often this is just thinking about something in advance and effectively sabotaging a situation so that it motivates your child to communicate a little bit more. So offering a choice, we've already talked about choices in terms of questions. Choices are quite a tricky concept, so you may need to start with something really easy where you give a choice of something they like and something they dislike, whether that's food or toys or activity. So as much as possible, use the objects and show them while you're saying the words, and offer the two things. When your child makes a choice, through whatever means, they might use a word, they might make a sound, reaching or pointing it. We want to reward that attempt at communication. So we do give the item to the child, but we want to say the word for them. So if you show them two different things, you've got a car and a train, and they choose the train, then by reaching for it, then we want to give it to them and say the word train. Over time, your child's going to be able to make more complex choices. So they might be able to choose between two things that they like equally, or they might be able to choose between 3 or 4 different items as well. Sabotage is a really good way at looking at these situations and creating opportunities for children. So you can place items out of reach. So put something that is part of your normal routine. It could be a snack or a drink or something they like to play with, where your child can see it, but where they can't reach it. We want them to give you a bit of a clue and a signal that that is something that they want. So that could be them looking at it and looking back at you. They might point towards it. They might reach. Your child might be making sounds or saying the word. So that's them making a request, and we can reward that by giving the item to them, saying the word, and if your child uses a word, adding on one more word as well. You can also do this by placing items in a transparent box. So things like a Tupperware can be good for food items, or it could be something like bricks. It's really helpful if this is something that the child can't open themselves, so they can see the item, but they've still got to request some help from you. Wait for them to show you that they need help, and then you can give them that word. So you can say help or open, but wait for them to look at you, to bring you the item or make a sound to show you, and then give them the word that they need. We also can use people toys. So you can give your child a toy or have them available to your child. As we mentioned earlier, this can be things like bubbles or a spinning top or a jack-in-the-box, something that's a little bit trickier for them to use, and they're going to need another person or usually a grown-up to help them with it. Wait for them to ask you in some way, and again, model that word. So you can model the word help if they're holding it up to you. Or if they say help, you can say mummy help. Or if it's something to do with the toy, you can think of all those different words. So naming, actions, different things like that, like spin for a spinning top. So try and use one single word, or if they use one word, then add another one on for them. Another way we can sabotage situations to create more opportunity to communicate is to offer a small amount of something. This is really helpful at snack time. So you might have things that come in single pieces like raisins or chocolate buttons or crisps, or there are some toys that come in parts. There are some things that you'll be able to divide up. So your child might normally eat a whole apple, but perhaps you're going to be able to chop that up into more pieces and just give them one. Then you hold the rest of the items back and you wait for your child to request more. So again, when they look at you or they look at the item or they reach for it or they make a sound, we want you to say more or label the item. So you can say apple, or you might say more, or you might say more apple. whatever your child needs to say in that situation, just say those words for you to them. More's a really good one because you can use it in lots of different situations. They don't necessarily have to know the name or be able to say the name of all of the items, but more can be used in play, it can be used during food, it can be used during games. So modelling that is a really useful one. We can give all but one. So this is similar where you're holding back part of it. So you might give your child part of something, but not all of it. So they're not able to complete it. Again, we're trying to motivate your child to make a request. So you could give the bubble pot or the wand, but not the other part. You might give them a cup, but there's no drink in it. So giving them part of it so they know it's a certain part of the routine or they're about to be starting a particular activity, but something is missing and they need to ask you for it. Again, as soon as they indicate to you, whether they're using words or sounds or nonverbal communication, model that word to them and give them the item that they need. So all of this is creating different ways for your child to communicate, for them to make requests and so on. So as much as possible, and whenever you have the time, we want you to try not to anticipate your child's needs and wants. Try and wait and see if they'll communicate with you. It can be tricky in some situations. There's going to be certain times of the day where you don't have time to do with this, or depending who else you have in your situation, you might not be able to. But where possible, we'd like you to try and hang fire. So either pause or use one of these sabotage techniques to give your child that extra opportunity. Another thing you can do is to pause during activities. So something you do fairly regularly, it's quite routine or something enjoyable, like pushing on a swing or turn taking or singing songs, something you do a lot of the time, but then you can unexpectedly pause. So you pause, stop singing, and you wait. And again, we're looking for your child to communicate to you that they want more and they want you to carry on. So you pause, wait for them to give you a clue, model that word. So you can say more or again, and then you can carry on.